This is Maximum Lawyer with your host, Tyson Mutrux.
Welcome back to another episode of the Maximum Lawyer podcast. My name's Tyson Mutrux. I've got a really good episode for you today. Today, I'm going to be answering a listener's question, and it's going to be a good one. And it's about transitioning from a defense firm to an injury firm. So it's going to be a lot of fun and a lot of good tips, I think, in this episode that you're really going to want to listen in for. Before I get to that, though, I do want to ask everyone that if you have something you want me to cover, and these are some of my favorite things to do is whenever someone asks me a question, because my guess is that if one person has it, it's the old adage, if one person has the question, probably a lot of people have the question. So if you have something, even if you think it's basic, shoot it in. Let me know. Just text me at 314-501-9260, 314-501-9260. If instead it's a little easier for you, that's pretty darn easy, but if you want to just go to maximumlawyer.com/ask, that's another way you can do it. You can actually upload your voice to that, or you could send me a text question, either way. But I'm happy to answer those questions. It's a lot of fun to do it. So here we go. I'm going to do my best to protect this person's their identity because they don't want their current employer to know about it. They made that very clear to us. They had fired the question over to us. I'm not even going to tell you if it's a man or a woman. I might even throw you off and say it's a man, and I may say she or I may say he. I'll throw you off a little bit. But the whole idea is I don't want to get this person fired. I want to try to answer the question so that they can eventually transition into personal injury. I'm not going to mention their name, nothing. So here we go. Let's see. Happy Sunday. My name is blank, and I'm reaching out because I'm a lawyer at a defense side firm and discovered your podcast. It's fantastic. Thank you very much. Appreciate that. In a few episodes, you said listeners could submit questions. Yes, I did. So I'm a blank law school. This is the year. I don't want to give any clues. I'm even a little uncomfortable when it comes to mention the defense side. However, it's one of those things where I think that's important to the story here. So that's why I'm bringing it up. But so I'm a blank year law school grad, and my ultimate goal is to become a personal injury lawyer with my own firm one day. For the next 2 to 3 years, I plan to pay down loans, save, and build skills. My max/dream goal is to earn $500,000 to $1 million+ one day, just helping people. Big goal, I know. I'll be honest with you, I think you could dream bigger. So just you might be setting some artificial limits on yourself. So I think you could dream bigger on them. That being said, let's keep moving on. Besides listening to your great podcast, very nice. I appreciate the kudos. Do you have advice for someone who wants to transition to PI? I don't care how basic the advice is. I just want to get my hands/mind on everything I can to be prepared. All right. Lots of things there. And by being at a defense firm, I'm just going to assume that you have basic PI knowledge. So I'm just going to go with that. If you don't, you need to go and get that. The very first thing though, I'm very adamant about this. If you can't get past this, you should not be a PI lawyer. I think this is really important. You need to get your head wrapped around the idea of building a case and doing everything you can to win that case for that client, as opposed to the defense mindset of doing everything you can to destroy a case. I've seen this with several attorneys where they have a really, really hard time getting past that. I don't know why. I think it's one of those things where some of these defense attorneys, I call them just true believers. And you probably knew who I'm talking about. The ones that they're skeptical about every single case. And there's a lot, and understandably, I get why defense firms are like this, or defense attorneys are like this, where you're very skeptical because you probably see some really wild things, and you see how, some people are liars. And then when you see that, you see a couple of times, you think that everyone's a liar. You have to rip that out of your brain, and you have to instead say, you know what, how do I make this case? How do I build this case? How do I show that my client is telling the truth? It is a different mindset. And we've had attorneys come work for us that it just didn't work out because they couldn't get past that. I'll tell you, it's kind of crazy because you will talk to them and they will tell you how bad our case is. And even though I'm looking at it, I'm thinking, that's a $500,000 case. What are you talking about? So get past that the best you can. There's some ways of doing that. So I'm not going to just tell you, hey, you got to go do that. But a really simple one, and it's going to take some reading. It's a fairly thick book, but it's an easy read. Really, you need to consume everything by Nick Rowley. Nick Rowley's great. But Running with the Bulls, if you start with that book, I think it's going to help you as a defense attorney over the next few years anyways. But really understanding how a case affects a human, it's a very, very impactful book that we have all of our new lawyers read. So even if you've been doing this for a long time, we have you read it anyways, because it is such a good book. And it really takes it down to, how has this whole thing affected my client at every single level, right? How has it affected their religion? How has it affected the relationships with their husband? And how has it affected their relationships with, their kids? And what hobbies have they missed out on? You look at all areas of their life, 360 degrees around their life, and it's really, really helpful. So I definitely recommend that. When it comes to just some other basic tips about gaining knowledge about personal injury, there's Reptile by David Ball, and I understand that there's a whole to do about that these days when it comes to Reptile and all that. But there is Reptile. What it does do is it does a good job of kind of teaching how to build a case. I think some of the things they do, and Reptile is not, as an organization, not really a thing, I don't think, anymore, but it does teach you how to build a case, which is good. There's some kooky things they do, which I wouldn't recommend, but it does allow you to teach you some things to build a case. So that's really, really good. Trial Lawyers University, another great organization. You can go and you can watch CLEs online. They've got conferences and all that. That's a really good resource. I would start with those. Okay. Make it really, really simple. Another one, like if you're going to do smaller car crashes, which is, sometimes the bread and butter for many firms, read Reptile in the Mist. It gives you some techniques in dealing with some of the smaller cases that you may not have all the money to spend when it comes to experts, because it's a smaller case and it may not warrant it. It's a really good book too. So that's a really good one. The next thing is that this is probably obvious to you, but I'm just going to mention it. You said you don't care how basic it is. Develop as many trial skills as you can right now. So get into as many trials as you can. Be ready to try cases whenever you do become a lawyer. That's important because, as you know, it's going to affect your case values. So you're going to make sure that you are willing to try a case and that the defense attorneys know that. Really, really important. Networking in the PI space. Now, I hope that you are one of those defense attorneys that gets along really, really well with the injury side, and you're not some, pompous prick that some defense attorneys are. And that we have them on our side too. The PI side, we have them on our side as well. In any practice area, that's just how it works. But you are going to want to network. Many of your best cases are going to come from the PI, other PI attorneys. So they're going to get conflicted out, or they're going to, especially if you're just, starting your own firm, like I would refer you cases. I would send you some of the cases that I don't really want, we don't have time for. They're still a good case. It's just a matter of the value's a little bit lower. So you're going to want to befriend as many PI attorneys as you possibly can, and just network. And networking can be kind of a dirty word, but you're going to want to build relationships. Okay. Build relationships with as many injury firms as you can, with as many injury attorneys, and you're going to want to, sprinkle it throughout all the practice areas. Get to know many doctors. That's also pretty important too. The next part is, and you may already have some of this, but understand the medical. So really dig in and understand what conservative care is, and the importance of MRIs, and how to read an MRI, and how some doctors, what they can do is they can try to show that there was no herniation, when in reality they were like 3 slices off in the MRI, and they're just trying to mislead you. So there's things like that where you're going to want to really understand the medical so you can't be misled. It is a mistake, and I don't want to get too into the weeds when it comes to actually handling PI cases, but you don't necessarily want to go to battle with a doctor, but you're going to want to make sure you understand the basics, so that when you need to call them out and show that they're trying to mislead the jury, you can do so. Because otherwise they're gonna run circles around you. So you really need to know that part of it. You're going to want to make sure that you are, building your business acumen. Make sure you understand about the basics. Read Profit First by Mike Michalowicz. It's Motorbike Mike. I can't remember how do you say his last name, but I think it's Michalowicz. E-Myth is another one by Michael Gerber. Understand marketing. Marketing is another really, really good one that you want to, study how other successful law firms, and luckily you're listening to the podcast. So that's really, really good. Understand, SEO, Google Ads, social media. You're going to want to, since you're saving up money, that's great. You're going to be able to hire marketing experts. Fantastic. But you're going to also want to understand the basics too, so you're not being taken advantage of. Get some advice. Get a good accountant. Get some advice on accountants in your area that you could use as your accountant. Get some advice from your financial planner. If you don't have a financial planner, get in touch with a financial planner. Also really, really important. So that's good. This next one the next tip is going to be maybe tough on you, but I don't know. You're going to want to try to get some basic experience handling PI cases. I know some defense attorneys, they're allowed to take an occasional car crash. If you can do something like a small case just to get the basics as to how the case works, that can be really, really important. So do that if you can. My other advice is that it might make sense for you to go work for an injury firm for the next few years. That way you're getting paid to learn. That would be pretty nice. Although I do know that generally it seems that defense firms are paying associates more than injury firms. But the upside is that you could bring in cases and you make substantially more as an associate as PI. But the base salary tends to be more at defense firms. But the upside is definitely more when it comes to the PI side. So I would say consider doing that, working for a PI firm for the next 2 to 3 years. If you're going to want to be saving money anyways, I would definitely try to do that as much as you can. Something else that you might not be thinking about, because you might be thinking about, PI side completely, but master your side of the fence. Master the defense side right now. Understand all the tactics that you're using and why you're using, and then think about how, as a PI attorney, you can get around those. That is one that you might not be thinking about as much. Hopefully you are, but you might not be. But something you don't understand quite yet is because you are on the defense side. You don't understand as much how the insurance companies work. That is always kind of surprising to me how, because there's sometimes gatekeepers on the defense side where, the partner wants to talk to that insurance company. They're the ones that kind of want to do all the hand holding because of, it's essentially their client. That you don't understand as much about the inner workings of insurance as much. So try to understand as much about the insurance game, how that works, why it makes sense for them to not pay, why it makes sense for them to delay a case before they pay, because they're making money on every day that they don't pay a settlement, they're making more money on that money. So there's a lot of things that you're going to want to make sure you understand when it comes to the mechanics, how the sausage is made when it comes to insurance. That's another one. Negotiation skills. Read Never Split the Difference by Chris Voss. It's a really, really good one. I've noticed that some defense attorneys have been trying those lately. I do kind of find it funny. I laugh at it a little bit because some of them are not very good at it. But that's another one that you're going to want to make sure you hone your negotiation skills quite a bit. Mindset. We talked a little bit about mindset, about change, but generally I'm kind of talking more about the artificial limits that you might be setting on yourself when it comes to like the 500,000, $1 million. And I'm not saying you are necessarily, but you might be setting some caps on yourself that you may not be warranted. You might be thinking that you can only get to 500,000 or $1 million. Maybe you get to 5 million or 10 million. So just do some inner searching to find out if you maybe are putting some artificial caps on yourself that shouldn't be there. With that, also make sure you're setting clear goals for yourself. So if you say, hey, I don't like the fact that you're saying 2 to 3 years, I would say in 3 years or in 2 years. Give yourself an exact date that you're going to do this, whether you're working on the PI side at the time or you're working at a defense firm. But on this date, I'm going to resign from my job and I'm going to launch my PI firm. And that way you can work backwards, give yourself some benchmarks and figure out all the things you need to do between now and then. Get a basic, I've got a couple more tips for you, but start learning. Make sure you learn the basics of technology, especially when it comes to AI and automation. You can learn about, some of that on the podcast I'm going to be, personally focusing a lot on that over the next couple of years. Doesn't mean all the episodes are going to be about that, but we are going to focus that because it's a really important thing. We talked about it in the Guild just on Saturday about how industries are changing. I looked at a McKinsey article about it, and there's going to be some massive disruption. So, but just get a basic understanding of that, because that's pretty important. And then I guess, the last thing I'll talk about is building your personal brand. So social media, make sure you start to kind of focus on your outward appearance to people. How do you want people to view you? That's important. So when it comes to your social media, when it comes to how you're dealing with people, start to build your brand, build your legs of your brand. So kind of figure out, okay, what are the 4 different things? And it could be 4, it could be 5, it could be 3, but 3 to 5 things that make up your brand. So do that. That's important too. So that way you can start to kind of hone in on your messaging when it comes to your marketing down the line. I think that is enough. I went a little bit longer than I normally do on this one, so hopefully this was helpful for you. I appreciate you submitting it too. And if you have more, feel free to shoot some more our way, and I'll make sure I'll keep you anonymous. Anyone else, if you want me to not mention your name, that's fine. But otherwise, I plan to mention your name. So make sure you do say that. I'm glad that this person told me not to say their name, because I was actually going to record the same day that I got it. And luckily I didn't, because the next day I got the message about not giving their name. So, but that's all I have for you. Really appreciate you listening. Again, if you want to text me anything, 314-501-9260. That's all I have for you this week. Until next week, remember that consistent action is the blueprint that turns your goals into reality. Take care.